Hey y'all, welcome back to Right at the Wire. Well, today we're going to be looking at the Queen Elizabeth II Challenge Cup. It's a turf race for 3-year-old fillies to be run at Keeneland on the Saturday card. And looks like a pretty good race, so let's get into it. So this is the Queen Elizabeth II Challenge Cup. It's a Grade 1, and it's the 9th race at Keeneland on the Saturday card. It's run at a mile and an eighth, and that should say on the turf, for 3-year-old fillies. So we look at the field, and it's a full one. Should be a field of 12. We do have one AE, Freitas the Red, but I don't. We'll see what the weather brings. The forecast is for rain, and that has a really big impact on what goes on here. As you can see from the front, we've got a fair amount of early speed in this race, and that actually plays very much into the hands of Elusive Princess, but we'll go through the categories one by one. I think Heavenly Sunday will be on the engine more than likely and be chased by Sounds of Heaven. Maybe Sounds of Heaven will get the lead. It'll be one of those two. And then I'll figure Mission of Joy, Safine, and Prerequisite will all be chasing. But one of the things about the 3-year-old Americans in this race is they all seem to be stuck in the same pattern. They all seem to have plateaued in their progress, with maybe the exception of Papilio. And consequently, there's a lot of sameness to this field, and it would be hard to differentiate if there weren't imports in this race because of their sameness. So on the front end, none of them really stick out. I think Sounds of Heaven is one we probably want to think about. This one has been doing pretty well. And just finished third behind Tahira in her last race, and seems to do better on firmer ground. It's not going to be necessarily firm on Saturday if it rains, so can run on the softer turf. So, but it looks to be in pretty good form, and is probably a little better than our front runners, and that's the reason I've kept her in. But I think it's going to be awful hard for any horse to wire the field. Given their makeup, but Sounds of Heaven probably can stick around a little while, I think. Then from the pace pressers, or the ones who will be about mid-pack, Mauge is obviously a standout. She beat Tahira, and that's all you need to know. That this is a horse with a ton of talent, but hasn't run around one turn, let alone two. She has been running on straightaways and is obviously excellent at a mile, but we don't necessarily know if she can stretch out to 2 turns. And her pedigree doesn't necessarily scream it. Exceed and Excel is kind of like a miler sire. The average winning distance, I believe, is like 6.7, 6.9 furlongs, something like that. So it's not overwhelming that this horse could make the transition. And for that reason, I've got a lot of doubts as to whether she can do it. Now you couple in that there's going to be weather, and you never want to bet a horse too hard who's doing something for the first time. And this one's doing 2 turns for the first time, doing the States for the first time. A lot of things that I think compromise her position. But you have to include, no question about it, has a ton of talent. But I just wonder about that. I think that's a realistic objection to have about putting her on top. Lindy is one that came over from Europe and has had a start under her belt and did okay, wouldn't say great, but it's logical, I think, that this one will move forward with a race under her belt. Probably will be okay with the soft ground too, has run on it before. So I think this is one that 6 to 1 is a pretty good price for, that perhaps you want to consider. Papilio is just a really solid horse, and of the 3-year-olds, I think represents the best chance to win it. The American 3-year-olds, I should say. This one ran a nice race last time, and it was doing really well earlier in the year, and then just sort of plateaued a little bit, but seems to be back on track. And so you'd have to like Papilio, particularly running about mid-pack, might get the jump on the closers, and we'll get to them in a second. And that tactically, that might give Papilio a really good shot at factoring in this race, and could spring the upset at a 10 to 1. That's an outstanding price. Elusive Princess, if you go back to that race at Saratoga, if we have wet ground again, lights out. I think this race is over. She's never run on anything but soft turf. So if it does rain, that's right in her wheelhouse. If it is not soft, then I think we got to wonder a little bit about her, and maybe the complexion of the race changes. So make sure you look at the weather forecast. So Elusive Princess to me kind of gets an asterisk because of if the ground is the kind that she likes, it's no problem. But we don't know how she is on firm. We just don't know. There was a horse years ago, Wonder Again, was a filly, and she was lights out on yielding turf. You couldn't beat her, but she was very beatable on other type of ground. This might be that type of situation. So I think that we definitely want to know what the weather is before we consider betting. But I like Elusive. Other than that, I like Elusive Princess a lot in this race, and would be the win candidate, especially if it's wet. If it's not wet, not quite so sure. And then finally, Liguria is a horse that demonstrated a little bit of talent earlier in the year, and I think is one that can be run better than she has. And being by Chad Brown, I'm sure that if there's something that needs to be corrected, it has been. I think she's a cut below the very best in here. But, if Elusive Princess doesn't fire, this is the kind of race that a closer can win because of all the early pace pressers and early pace in the race. So if Elusive Princess doesn't like it if it's firm, then you got Liguria there at a price who could upset the apple cart. So here's our top five for the QE2 Challenge Cup. Elusive Princess, I think, is the logical win candidate here. If it rains and it is soft turf, then it's lights out. It's a perfect scenario for the distance, everything else, and I would definitely put on top if, in fact, it's wet. If it's not, then maybe we have some other options like Papilio. Papilio is coming to this race in pretty good form. And I think having the being a pace presser, being off all the early pace, will get the first jump on the closers, and I'll have a really good chance to win this. I'm going to throw Sounds of Heaven in here in third because of the early pace runners. I think Sounds of Heaven is a little bit better than the Americans, and consequently, I think she can probably stick around a little bit. And at 8-1, you're getting a nice price. Maj, we can't leave off, but I'm putting forth. Only because we just don't know about two turns, and that's such a big question mark. It's really hard for me to see her being any higher than fourth at this stage. Maybe third. Maybe she can get the bottom of the trifecta. You have to use her, but I think it's a big question mark about the two turns. And then finally, number five, we're going to use Liguria. Again, if Elusive Princess doesn't like it firm, Liguria does. And then you've got a closer who will have a pretty good scenario and could upset the apple cart, and you get a nice 15-1 price. So that's the QE2 Challenge Cup. I think it's going to be a really good race. And again, check that weather forecast before you make up your mind completely, because if it rains and the turf is soft, it definitely impacts that race. You definitely want to upgrade Elusive Princess and maybe downgrade her if it's firm. So that's just a little extra thing to think about. Hope our analysis helps you as always, and wish you the best of luck with the wagering. If you do like content like this, please, of course, like and subscribe, and we do thank you for coming by. It's starting to sprinkle, and so I think I better make this short. That's it from here. Talk to you soon, and until then, be well.